Hi everybody, this is Craig Tanner for The Mindful Eye and the Daily Critique. Today's image was submitted by Ed, who is an intermediate photographer from Florida. Ed said that he had been following a killdeer nesting site for several weeks and he was trying to capture the birds in flight, and that was difficult because these birds have a fast darting flight pattern. He says this wasn't his sharpest effort, but he really liked the colors and the reflections in the blurred background. Ed shot this with a Pentax K20D 135mm lens. I'm assuming this is a crop factor camera, so the effective focal length is longer, closer to 200mm at ISO 200 and f8. Used a shutter speed of 1/160th of a second. From looking at the shot, Ed doesn't say this in his backstory, but I'm assuming that he panned along with the bird. I definitely would love to hear from Ed about that, because I don't want to make the wrong assumption here, but I just want to make a point about technique. If in fact that's what happened, one of the main things I love about this image is just the way motion has played out relative to the story of a bird in flight and relative to just the subject matter in the image. Really beautiful artistically and also just technically from the standpoint of suggesting motion. And this is, technical information that I would want to put in the bank and really remember it. If in fact this was a pan, I would want to try and remember how quickly I panned, how fast I panned, and I would remember this lens and this shutter speed for this kind of pan. It's really beautiful the way the blur on the background has abstracted this reflected light back here, but then the head of the bird and the tail of the bird is still pretty darn sharp, but then the wings, again assuming this is a pan beating against the motion of the pan, the tips of the wings have blurred, further really driving home the idea of motion. So just incredible from a technical standpoint and the idea of motion. There are a lot of other things to love about this image. A really awesome moment with the bird, with the wings being on the upbeat here and totally spread out, and particularly this top wing just making such a beautiful archetypal shape of the idea of a wing. The killdeer itself has these really beautiful and dramatic markings, and that's really helping in this shot with all of this real dramatic color. Red and green is a real powerful color complement, and red such a powerful color, and then the specularity of this sort of jagged-edged white that's really helping to sell the idea of motion. It's hard to imagine a bird that didn't have a very dramatic pattern being able to play around in this space and sort of compete from a visual design standpoint. Another thing that I really like about this image is I love the way this idea comes in up here. Number one, it's again just a really beautiful complement and rhythm to the ideas and shapes and colors that are happening on the bird. Just almost a perfect complement there, and then in the negative space you get the wings suggested in other shapes and the bird. It's also, to me, really neat how it gives the image some depth. It's sort of a nice counterpoint to the bird. It's a nice anchor. It gives the image sort of a third dimension. Otherwise you'd have the bird and then just sort of this mosaic, almost kind of stained glass feeling behind the bird. And this suggests trees, which is a real powerful thing to me, that connects to the idea of birds, and it just gives the story a third dimension. I think that's so important in the image. The other thing I love about this is just the placement of the bird in the frame, all this negative space below the bird, and again sort of going along with the idea of flight. When I think about perfect world improvement for this image, there are two things I think about changing. One is a color cast. I get a real strong sense of warm everywhere, and this is so abstract because of the blurred background. I would take some liberties with a shot that I might not take with more of a formal portrait of a bird waiting or nesting or just sitting there. The killdeer is brown on the back and black and white underneath, and Ed is showing that here, and you're getting a sense of the warmth on the back, but I'm getting a sense of that sort of red cast everywhere, and I'd like to get rid of that. I've already done the work because it took a little while. I'm just going to show you in a real sort of quick way how this is just one way to go about doing this. Lots of ways to do it. I go to the adjustment panel and go to curves. These three eyedroppers right here let you sample a black point, a gray point, and a white point in the image. I'd go right here and get this dropper, sample an image to set a gray point, and I would go right here on the killdeer and click, and then I would go back to layers. I would make the mask active and make black my background color. I'm going to do that by hitting the X key, and then I would do a command or control delete to fill that mask with black. I'd get a small brush, so I'm going to hit the B key to bring out the brush and get a small brush. I want to make sure my hardness is at 0, working on a mask here. And my opacities, I'm going to start low, small, and work big, 20% opacity. I would come in first and paint on the bird. I'd be doing this at 100%, so I'm just doing this in a rough way. But I'd maybe even get a little bit smaller brush and just do a good job of painting on the bird and applying almost 100% of this change. Again, I'm not going to just come right in at 100%. I don't want to hit that and then have to back up. I'm going to build it up. I'm going to take the time to do that every time. People complain about how much time we're spending in front of the computer working on Photoshop. I'd like to take some of those people in a little time travel machine and take them back to the darkroom. If you were, I'm not talking about doing automatic prints. I'm talking about, trying to make an exhibition print from a negative, or taking a slide and making an inner negative and registering that, doing all the things that happen in the darkroom. Whatever you do in Photoshop is 15 million times faster than that. So I'm just going to take the time to build this up slow. So I'm not having to worry about mistakes on the edges and all that, and selections and craziness, in my opinion. I'm going to apply it to the bird, and then I'm going to get a big brush, and now that I've biased this towards the bird and painted in almost 100% there, then I'm going to come in and paint at, again, 20% opacity and start applying this change to get rid of the red to the background. And I'm just going to eyeball it and say, yeah, you know what, now my grays look fairly neutral, and my whites look pretty clean, and I get a sense of color as a place that you go to in the image, instead of one color being everywhere. The other thing that I might do here is hit the X key and come back in and apply a red back to the warm areas. With that real bright white, this image needs the real strong orange and red to balance that out. And I went ahead and did this already, so I want to show you what my mask looked like. You'll get a sense of the work that I just described doing. Applying 100% there to the bird, some of that correction to the background until it just looked right to my eye. I want to make sure we're on a color-corrected monitor when we're doing work like this, if we're just going to eyeball it and not use the info palette or something to do that work. And then you can see where I came back in, and then after the big brush and getting rid of that color cast, I came back in and added the red to the areas that were red and orange. You can see that there are almost no hard edges anywhere because I'm using zero hardness on the brush, and I'm building up opacity slowly. And so that's what that change looked like to the image. And then the next thing that I personally would do, this will be blasphemy to some people, I would get rid of the reflection of the bird. To me, this is what happens in that case. Ed knows that this is a reflection. Some people don't even know that this is water in the background, and the reflection is showing the wings sort of in what looks like an opposite orientation. It's also dead on par with the bird, and it stops the movement in the shot. And there would be a lot of different ways to go about getting rid of this reflection if you were open to doing that. And I've done it in a real rough way just to save myself time. I just did cloning. And like I said, it's rough. There are a lot of different ways that you might do it. You can also see that I came in and this is very rough, and I wouldn't do it like this, but I repeated this actually to just sort of create a diagonal here that leads up to the bird. So I didn't just get rid of the reflection, I actually played around in here. And this is an image where if I was going to make a print out of this, I might play around with those kinds of things quite a bit, just trying to fill out balance in the pattern in the background. But in a rough way, you can at least see the difference between having the reflection in there and not having it. And to me, it's a stronger image without it. You could also maybe make the case for cropping, and I'll just show that real quick. But I personally don't like the idea of cropping because I like having more negative space at the bottom. I like the bird being more of a discovery in the image, and I like that negative space under the wings personally. And I'd love to hear your feedback about any and all of the things that I talked about today. I think this is an absolutely stunning image. I'd love to see Ed try and create a portfolio or a show of images based on this theme, where he has birds in flight and he has abstract backgrounds and working right around this shutter speed, birds that are small. Huge prints would be incredible, and the bird becomes a discovery for the viewer in the image. It's not obvious right away. Really, really stunning shot, and I just, I'm amazed at people that are this dedicated shooting subjects this hard to shoot. And Ed's talking about spending weeks watching this. It's just really inspiring. Awesome image. Thanks a lot, Ed. Thank you for being here on the Mindful As Daily Critique.